All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Good Boss versus Bad Boss, a workshop on effective leadership. So, thank you very much for spending your lunch hour with me here today. There's a lot of content to cover, and I need your participation, a lot of your participation, actually. So, I'm breaking today's sessions into two parts. So, part one is about mindset and skill sets required for a manager. And this would be presented on a Mentimeter. So I think Priya will start sending in the Mentimeter link when we have certain surveys and polls for you to do. So please then, when that happens, join the Mentimeter link via the chat box and then answer the questions there directly. And then if you have questions or comments about those polls or those questions, then you can type your comments into the Zoom chat box instead because I'm closing the comment section on Menti because I'm currently handling three screens right now. So I'm just trying to just manage where comments are going to go. So comments all go into the Zoom chat box and the poll questions go into Menti. So keep the Mentimeter window open after each question because all the questions will use the same link. So if you have, multi windows open, just keep the Menti window open, and then you can go in there and answer questions as well. So Priya, if you please provide the Menti link in the chat box already right now, that would be really appreciated. I will open for a mini Q&A at the end of today's session. And if we run out of time, like I already said to Joe, please come to our business strategy clinics at the Central Library. We organize one every 2 months, and you'll have about 3 hours to basically ask all your questions and also to learn from other people's questions. The next one that's coming up is on the 7th of February, and Priya will put down the link to the next session, which is in my link tree. So Priya, if you just put my link tree there, and then people, if you just scroll down all the way to where it says NLB free workshops, you can sign up for the next one in my link tree. So after the Q&A, what we will do is we'll send you the quiz link. The quiz is open for 3 days and it closes on the 2nd of February on Monday at 2 p.m. A 50% pass rate is required to obtain the certificate. Do understand that the quiz cannot be easy because if we are to use it for the SG Founders Grant at Enterprise Singapore, it cannot be easy. But please know that it is not that difficult to also get 50% if you've been taking down a lot of notes. So please ensure you have your pen and paper ready, or some note-taking device. So just make sure that you're taking notes and don't be afraid of the quiz. Just take notes, and then essentially you should be able to answer most questions if you have been taking notes. So without further ado, let's begin. So why am I teaching this particular topic is because of basically a little bit about my background. So, I studied mechanical engineering and accounting at two different universities at the same time. So when I also was studying at the two different universities, what I was also doing was I was working for a sort of like an auto parts manufacturing factory in Johor. And so what I used to do in that factory was sort of like manage, factory related stuff, automation, talking to suppliers, bringing on, different consultants, trying to figure out how to increase our outputs and stuff like that. So it was a very kind of like factory operational thing. And then later on, when I graduated, I moved on to sort of working in LA, and I worked in this company called the Capital Group, which moved me to a different department. I was an internal management consultant there. So every 4 months I moved to a different country to work on a different project. So I reported directly to the board of directors in LA. And then I, dealt with sort of like the subsidiary, board of directors, whatever kind of things they need, and then aligned it to sort of what the senior board of directors in LA kind of required. And so I moved through, LA, Hong Kong, London, Geneva, Switzerland, Singapore as well. And then essentially, when I was like moving through all these different countries, I was working at sort of like in an MNC capacity, and then sort of like managing a lot of people and projects. And so that was a very interesting scenario for me because every 4 months my boss would change, right? And every 4 months my function would change. And so it was a very interesting period of time where I really picked up a lot of my management skills. Then after that, when I left Capital Group, I started my own, property freelancing. So I was managing property, I was managing tenants. It was a very, very different management style as well. And in 2011, I bought a tech startup, and that at that time it was sort of like not really a startup anymore. It was more like a SME running for about 7 years, and they were kind of like in trouble trying to get themselves to a point where they could be acquired. So what I was doing was doing a lot of the SME related stuff, bringing in a middle management layer, trying to get them into financial control. So we went out and we got bank loans instead of trying to raise more equity, that kind of stuff. And so it was another different set of management skills because it was at the SME level. And then finally, when I came back to Singapore from London, to in 21, and to 2024, I've been sort of like, teaching at NUS, SUSS. I've been mentoring a lot of kind of like startups. I am one of the national grip trainers at NTU. So essentially what I do is I go in and I mentor these, startups, and I'm helping these startups understand what it means to be, stakeholder management and sort of like other types of management, right? So essentially, I myself have, essentially 2024, I've started my own startup as well called Made Without Borders. So essentially, I'm, experienced in the startup level. I'm experienced at the SME level. I'm also experienced at the factory kind of setting and at the MNC level. So that's why, right now I teach management and I teach what it means to have effective leadership, and because of how I've translated through different industries and different roles and different countries as well, I realized that there are certain timeless traits in certain types of managers. So what I do right now is to translate those traits into a teachable moment, and I hope that when I'm teaching this is my experience, right? So I'm also hoping that you guys can share your experience so that I can learn from you as well. So I'm going to turn this around to say that there's no right answer. But at the end of the day, let's all learn from each other. And, I'm happily opening up the chat box here so that, we can have a discussion. You can disagree with me. Please disagree with me. Then I can make my, my slides better for next time. So without further ado, let's begin. What I want to do is to go into a few sets of videos, a few sets of questions, just to have an understanding of what everybody's management style is here first, before I move on to what I think is correct. So let's start by watching a video. So for this particular video, I want you to imagine that you are the boss and your staff is incompetent. I want to know what you're going to do. So you're going to type your message on the next slide to say what you're going to do. But right now, please watch this video and tell me later what you would do under such a circumstance.
我见过笨的，但没见过你那么笨。干啥子？把计算不就能拿进去了？哦，就是个。我见过蠢的，但没见过你们这么蠢的。这不就行了？
Okay, and now please join the Mentimeter link and please tell me if you are the boss and your staff is incompetent, what do you do? So it's really good that, most of you sound like very, very kind, really kind managers. You will train, you will coach, and you will share suggestions on why, and sort of like provide them with more feedback and guidance. Um, so there's one person that actually answered really well, which says here, understand that the incompetency is due to attitude issues or skills and know-how issues. If it's a skill or know-how issue, training should be planned. And if attitude issue, you need to understand more. And this is the point in which I completely agree. But this is my management style. I think you have to, as a manager, decide whether or not you're going to be spending more time training or you're better off just doing the job yourself. So I have seen certain circumstances where the staff is so incompetent to a point where it is actually what I call core incompetence, when, essentially you're telling the staff to close the main door, to save the aircon from running away. And then the staff forgets to close the door three times because they're lifting heavy things into the office. That's forgivable, right? You put in new SOPs to design how things are brought into the office so that they don't forget to close the door after that. So there are certain, policies that can be, done to basically prevent those things. But if you are a factory worker and you're told to put the guardrail down to protect them from chopping off their own fingers when they're sawing the wooden planks, and they repeatedly forget to put down the wooden planks. To me, this is core incompetence. Then this is a fireable offense. So essentially, you need to be able to determine what is the difference. So yes, you can coach and you can, try and give feedback, but at some point in time, you need to realize that if it is a core incompetence issue, then essentially you need to figure out whether or not this person is truly suitable for the job because it's a safety problem, right? And then like this contributor essentially said, if it's a skill or know-how issue, you can train, but if it's an attitude issue, I'm not sure whether or not you want to keep the person around any longer because essentially you're going to spend more time managing this person than having the time to be able to do actual jobs. So you have to make a determination on your own. So to me, there's no right or wrong answer here. It depends on the circumstances. And I am very, very thankful that a lot of you have a very kind approach rather than immediately fire, right? Now, I'm going to ask another question now, which is, if it is malicious compliance, how do you deal with malicious compliance?
里面你看车是这么抽的。哦，哦，我看过了，又是在抽屉头。你不信吗？又是真的在抽屉头。既然看到了，你不晓得哦，我晓得了。哦，你看嘛，又是真的在抽手头。
Okay, so malicious compliance. How do you deal with malicious compliance? Yeah, it is super angry situation, isn't it? Um, if it's intentional, this person says that they'll give a warning first. To me, if it's intentional, I won't even bother with a warning, but that's my management style. Um, Number one, discipline. Number two, fire. Number three, sue. That's quite an interesting one because I've never seen one where you've gotten to the extent of suing. Um, this is an attitude problem. See if they improve after given very sharpened instructions. And if not, they still find ways to do certain things like, get MC and stuff, then let them go. Um, I can see that, a lot of people are still very kind. They're giving verbal warnings, understanding what the intention is first, pointing out a mistake, before they actually fire. So this is very interesting for me to see because this is a very cultural thing. When I'm, traversing between different countries as well, there are different ways in which people approach things. In, sort of the Western world, they have to immediately put you on PIP, right? Because they still are giving you chances, but they're putting you on PIP. And then they have to essentially see whether or not, that improves after the PIP. But, the warning is legal and it is immediate, to say that, essentially this is not acceptable. They put you on PIP. And then once they put you on PIP, I think you have one or two chances more before you are officially fired. So it depends on how you would go about doing this. Um, I think like shifting from a rigid command and control to collaborative leadership. I think this is the part where collaborative leadership is sometimes very misunderstood, what it means by collaboration. Because if someone is demonstrating attitude problems and giving you sort of like malicious compliance, you really have to think about how much time you're taking to manage that person and to manage the attitude rather than actually doing any productive work. So to me, it's just a matter of an ROI problem. How much time is this person taking from me, and how much time do I have to basically go and manage this particular issue? So like I said, again, no right or wrong answer. Really depends on the person, really depends on the circumstances. So it's good to have an idea to see where you guys are lying in terms of the spectrum, but it looks like the Singapore culture is, very much, forgiving, try and deal with the problem rather than immediately fire. But I also see that there are some that are immediate fires. So, there are extremes in every culture. So we would see now, what exactly do you think? When I think of a good boss, I think of, can you give me some words that comes to your mind when you say, I think of a good boss? Compassionate, nurturing, someone who mentors, has clarity, gives recognition, very guiding, very coaching, someone who can spur me to be the best I can be. This is very, very interesting. Because it's the manager's role to essentially develop their employees, or does the company take precedence over your self-development? So I think this is something that, because a manager has to weigh multiple, stakeholders, right? So is this really good boss? Or, by helping somebody be the best they can be, they might be sacrificing time that they are wasting. I mean, they're not wasting, per se, that they're not spending enough time with other employees because they're trying to nurture you. So it's a very interesting thing as to see what exactly makes up a good leader. You can see that everybody has a very varied idea of what good boss is. Um, so someone who listens, someone who's approachable tends to be very standard answers, and that is also correct. So a lot of times, a good boss. So over here, you say that when I think of a good boss, I think of someone who gives spaces to learn, to grow, and to make mistakes. Is that really what a good boss is supposed to be? Can you imagine that, you have a coworker and your boss constantly allows this guy to make mistakes, and then there are always all these mistakes that you have to clean up? Then yes, he's a good boss to your coworker, but he's not a good boss to you. So it's very interesting how when you think of good boss and the different traits of a good boss, it's extremely varied. And what is good boss to one person doesn't seem to be good boss to another person. So Um, let's move on. So I've a clear idea now of sort of where people are in terms of what they believe is good boss. So now let's move on to what you think is a bad boss. So what are the traits or the words that you would use to describe what a bad boss is? So it's really cool to see micromanager comes up twice. Somebody who's unclear, someone who doesn't give credit, that blames their employees, um, spreading toxic culture. So the question is, what makes the word toxic? Is another thing that we have to define here. Takes credit for what others have done, denies their own mistakes, is very inconsistent, pushing the blame, treating staff as tools and not assets to grow. And the word micromanaging keeps coming up. So there are many toxic managerial traits, things that include like ego, not respectable, just blaming people, playing favoritism, we can see, self-serving. So a lot of self-serving, right? Just essentially just pushing other people out to die, no integrity, we can see all these things here. And then, refusal to listen. These are people with toxic traits, and toxic traits are very catastrophic for the business because they cause very high turnover rates and you find that the team never stops firefighting. And I don't recommend for people with toxic traits to become managers until they have been to a therapist. So maybe everyone can go see Joel, and then fix that psychological issue behind all that toxicity before they are ready to become managers. And then there are some traits displayed by some managers, mostly because of a systematic failure. So we have to differentiate between a bad boss that is toxic and a bad boss that is just due to corporate systemic failure, such as a lack of misunderstanding of the job scope or what they're supposed to do as a manager, or, the manager has a lack of resources and, things like endlessly moving targets, not giving enough attention to each staff, overworking each staff because of unrealistic expectations. Those are all what we call bad manager traits. These are curable. And this is what today's workshop hopes to help with. So if it's a toxic manager thing, I cannot help you. Maybe you have to go see Joel, who's a therapist. But
Mm.
what I can help with is essentially the bad manager traits that I think are curable. And, that's what we're going to talk about today. So after all these things that we've discussed, what is important is to realize that in general, the perception of a good boss and a bad boss is extremely polarized. What is good boss behavior to someone is bad boss behavior to another person. So, what you're going to realize is as a boss, you can never win. Some people think you don't give them enough attention, some people think you're micromanaging them already. And so for every action that you take, there will be some staff that will be happy. There will be some staff that will be angry. There will be some customers that will be happy. And there are some suppliers that will get angry. So as a boss, you're managing the expectations of multiple stakeholders, all with your own objectives. And the balance is almost impossible. So generally, there are traits for a good boss, and there are generally traits for a bad boss, but it depends on the role. It depends on the department. It depends on the type of employees, and it depends on the industry. So a good boss here says, somebody said that empowers their staff, and a bad boss micromanages their staff. But this is not the case for a factory setting where each employee needs to be micromanaged to their desired KPI to achieve full efficiency across the factory. So can you imagine a boss that comes in, who works in a factory and he comes in and he says, I'm here to empower the people, right? And you're like, can you go figure out how we will go and produce this car engine? It doesn't work in a factory setting like that. He would go and say, I believe in teamwork. You can do it. It doesn't work in a factory setting. That sort of leadership style will not work for that type of industry. And so it's the same for certain types of, video production companies and certain types of finance compliance departments where it's very factory-like in the way that it is run. And then that's when you need, people to actually almost to a point of micromanagement, down to how you key in a certain thing, how when a red flag comes up, you need to call a certain department. Those are all SOPs that are written in. It is literally you do it or you're not doing your job. So you need to understand that as a manager, your management style needs to change based on what types of people you're dealing with, right? So leadership styles needs to evolve. And so everything is on a case-to-case basis. And you can change your leadership style only based on the current circumstances of what you're dealt. And at the end of the day, a boss needs to be somebody that people can respect. So remember, a boss never wins. What is good boss to one employee is bad boss to another. So today we'll go through some psychological traits, some functions of a top boss. But remember that if you really want to succeed as a boss in the long term, what you should do is seek to be respected, not to be liked. So for me, I often hear people say this about me, which is I don't like her, but I respect the way she handles things. And to me, this is already the top accolade for a boss already. So let's begin with the first psychological trait and key management skill by asking you one question. So I think that there are three very important traits I must have to become a boss. Can you do me a favor and pick three? And when I'm saying this, I'm going to tell you outright there is a correct answer to this question. So once you've picked three, do me a favor and go to the chat box in Zoom and tell me why you picked those three instead of the other three. And remember, I keep saying that's a correct answer to this question. So please explain on your Zoom chat. Once you've done the mentee side, explain on the Zoom chat why you chose those three. So the explanation is more important than the actual choosing. So I really will hope that, either unmute yourself, tell me why you chose those three, or essentially type it out on the chat box, please. So SC here says that he chose honorable and sincere because it's basic human values as a trustworthy human being. Greg Chen says that honorable and sincere as well because you do what is right. Resourceful, because you need to possess the maturity for working with people, marshaling additional resources and etc., closing the gaps. Um, and then Joe says, honorable, resourceful, has my back because if I cannot work with them, that's very true as well. Yam Singh, oh, Charlie says, integrity, problem solver, sincere. So, sincere because he says not a chameleon. And then WL says that business is about working, it's about relationships, traits that promote, foster generative, productive relationships are paramount. So, Lionel says sincere, honorable, has my back because essentially they're important for connecting with people. But if they're important for connecting with people, but what if they cannot actually do their job, in the department? Does that matter as well, Lionel? Um, so Vincent says that the staff always sees us as problem solvers. We need to be resourceful, and that's correct. Um, so I am trying to figure out all your answers, and then NG says I cannot differentiate between sincere and genuine. Um, you're almost correct already, NG. So the correct answer is that they're all very important traits. They are all very important traits. And the only person that asked me a question was actually Angie. Um, so this leads us to the most important trait of good managers, which is, do you challenge your question? Do you challenge the premise that is given to you? Do you challenge the status quo? Or are you programmed just to follow instructions? So I said choose three, but if they're all important, you need to fight back. So when I gave you a premise and I said, so if I give you a premise and the premise is wrong, so I ask you, do you challenge me and say, hey, the question is wrong? Because good managers fight bad assumptions. Good managers fight a bad premise. They don't set their staff up for failure. So if the question comes and the question is wrong, you know, ask me that. If your top management is telling you your staff needs to hit this KPI, blah, 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 and if you think that that is wrong, there's no way that your staff can hit those KPIs, then go back with your mathematical justification as to why you think that this is impossible. You need to fight for your staff. You don't just take instructions from your top boss and then hand it down. Anybody can be an employee. It takes a certain mindset to become a good leader. And the most basic of which is to speak up, anticipate, question, and redefine your current premise as a manager. By doing this, you need to understand your own personal strengths. So, good operationals follow rules, good managers challenge rules. So, if you're currently a sales manager, what's your mindset when you're accepting new work from clients? Do you question the project scope and resources given to the team? Do you re-look at the project parameters before accepting the work for the team? Do you tell your sales team off the next time that they accept such work that your team will refuse to do it next time, if they're going to tell the client they can do everything? Do you fight for resources for your team? Do you just accept that, oh, that's the budget for the year? Or do you talk to your marketing team and know that, they're planning a Christmas promotion, so you can plan for more staff during the Christmas promotion weeks to help you package and deliver more? Or do you just say that, oh, it's just like that? It's just the resource I've been given you know because do you want to start interviewing and new temporary staff right now to help you cope with the Christmas surge and the Christmas peak? So remember that as a manager, your job is to question the status quo, is to redefine how things are done, and that is a key trait for a manager. So let us now move on to the second trait, which is I need to be the best among my team to be promoted as manager. So do you disagree or do you agree with this statement? So most of you are disagreeing, which is very, very good. Somebody's unmuted. Okay, so
Okay, I think the manager does not need to be the best.
okay,
It depends on best in what. Best in managing people, yes. Best in doing the work, no. Um,
okay.
yeah.
Very good, Joe. So thank you for already answering my next three slides. So, most of you disagree, some are neutral, and I would say that both are correct answers. It is both neutral and disagree. So, if your manager is brought in because, they are the son of the boss and they know nothing about the industry, do you think he needs to be a little bit best in his role as well? So I agree that disagree and neutral are the correct answers here. And so let's move on to the next slide because in order for me to answer what is the definition of best, I first need to explain two concepts regarding corporate structure, and then we can talk about the word best when we talk about managerial skills. So this is a standard company structure made of three layers. So operational right at the bottom, middle managers sitting in tactical, and directors sitting in strategic right on top. And there are three key differences between these three layers, and that is scope on the left of the triangle, timeline of planning on the right, and also the third is the depth and breadth of roles, which I'll explain in the next slide. So, in scope, operational is focused on executing day-to-day mundane, almost repetitive work. Tactical manages those processes, projects, and people. And strategic handles policy making both internally and externally at the industry and political level. For timeline of planning, operational is short term, and on the other hand, strategic is long term. So, can anybody tell me how short is short term and how long is long term? Can you type your answers into the Zoom chat? So Ram says it depends. I think Ram, you're getting the gist of this. So short term is so according to Tayson, short term is 1 to 2 years, long term is 10 years. Greg says long term is over 2 years. Cindy says 3 to 6 months for short term. Daniel says daily versus weeks or months. And then Charlie says 3 years for long term, 1 to 3 years for short term. And Iris says depends on the industry. So very good. So now let's move on to essentially what does that mean? So I'm going to ask you a question right now. So in some operational planning, it can be week to week, it can be day to day planning, and can even be hour to hour planning in some high tech factories. So when we're thinking long term, I'm going to ask you this. How long does it take for a new drug to be invented in the pharmaceutical line? So for the drug to be developed, invented, developed, and passed through the whole FDA approval, is it 7 to 15 years, I would say? How long do you think it takes for oil pipelines to be laid from Russia to Germany? Maybe 25 years? So timeline of planning is very subjective from industry to industry. Long term can be 25 years for oil and gas. It can be 2 years for your F&B business. Policy making decisions for F&B could be things like, should we plan for expansion of our store by asking for first rights of refusal of the store next door in case, they close their shop, we can expand, but I want first rights of refusal to that shop. Or it could also be planning for trademarking your brand and stuff like that. Those are all long-term planning. So how does then the corporate structure trickle down to managerial good and bad? This leads us to a third key difference, which is the depth and breadth of corporate roles on the next slide. So at each level of operational, tactical, and strategic, the roles that run in it differ in depth and breadth. In ops, we're supposed to be, let's say, a developer in an IT department, okay? So that would mean that we need to have depth of role. That means we need to know our stuff well. We really need to know how to code and what coding different languages and infrastructural systems and how each system is interlinked to each other. So we really need to know coding if we are IT guy. So let's say we get promoted to IT lead into tactical. So now our role has less depth and then it takes on more breadth. And we now need to deal with other departments. We need to build networks outside of our own departments because we need to learn new skill sets to conduct our role. For example, I am talking to HR because now I need to deal with sick leave, performance issues. I need to do new hire. I need to write job descriptions. I don't know how to write job descriptions, conduct interviews. And these are radically different skill sets from, coding. And then I need to talk to finance because I need to manage budgets. I need to approve expense claims. Or then I need to talk to office services, for example, because I need a new laptop, phone, or an office space for my new hire. I need to figure out stationery for my new hire. And also, I need to talk to sales because sales is coming back with the customer complaints that I need to, debug, for example. So when I move into tactical, I'm dealing with a whole new set of management skills, and I need to have a whole new set of networks because I'm dealing with all these different departments, right? So for tactical, you spend less time on depth, so less coding, and then you take on more breadth. But then the breadth only moves you into what is called interdepartmental or intra-company. So you're still inside the company. But say the IT lead gets promoted to CTO, he moves into strategic, and that's when the depth completely disappears. So there's no more coding work that happens. So in fact, the CTO's breadth takes him outside of the company, where he needs to network in, political circles, media outlets, so he can lobby for tax changes that is beneficial for his company, or he can just pick up the phone and call CNN and say, "Hey, I need airtime because, I need to launch my company's new product." The CTO might even handle IPOs on NASDAQ or NYSE. He needs to do panels. He needs to do talks at industry, conferences and trade shows. And, he needs to basically understand and predict how the industry is going to move. He needs to understand the competition. He needs to do a lot of political networking or lobbying. He needs to do industry benchmarking because he needs to understand how the competitors are doing and how we are doing. And of course, he needs to do media appearance, right? So he needs to have speaking skills. He needs to know how to read off a teleprompter, that kind of stuff. So at each point, when you move up your ranks from operational to tactical to strategic, you develop a whole new set of two things: management skills and also networks. Whether or not it's intra-company or inter-company or inter-industry. So in the startup world, you often hear this, which is VCs will tell, the management that, your CEO is way out of his depth and he should step aside to let someone else take over the company to bring it to new heights. So sometimes this translates to we need somebody with media and political connections to get us, to lobby some new directional changes in the law or that thing or things like that. So let's move back to the previous question. Should you get promoted simply by being the best in your job? The answer is clearly no, you should not be promoted. You should be promoting the person who is best in their managerial skill. Because at the end of the day, what it means by best is why would you want to promote your best sales guy so that they're actually doing less sales work and, essentially more management work, where they might then earn you less sales revenue and then earn themselves less commissions, and both parties are angrier. So managers need to be promoted because they seem to be trained in certain skill sets or have developed certain networks. So can your best video producer or your best coder be trained to become good managers? Maybe, but it is not because they're currently good at video production or their IT skills at coding that they're then promoted. So skill sets and networks needed for each level of operational, tactical, and strategic is completely different. And the corporate practice now in Singapore of promoting the best man for the job has led to a universally chronic bad boss phenomenon. So the best software developer on your team may not be natural at running budgets and interviewing new hires. They may not even like doing it. So companies today have designed the system almost to ensure that the middle managers will almost certainly fail, because failing to differentiate between people managers and project managers is a key problem right now. So we can still promote the best software developer, but they are just promoted to senior developer, chief developer. It's a different type of promotion, but you don't promote them to become a people manager like an IT lead, because it takes a completely different skill set. So the way in which middle managers are hired and promoted needs a serious overhaul. So we need to look at basic personality traits, their skill sets, and also their networks to see if there's a way for them to succeed in a new role and to provide that training to ensure that they actually succeed in that role. So with this, now I would like to go back to that same question. I need to be the best among my team to be promoted as manager? This was the question I asked earlier. So now, understanding how corporate structures work, can you please tell me what does best mean? This is for me to just check your understanding so far. So we have best in managing people, but it's very generic. Best in management skills, again, very generic. Just try your best to get into the details. Like, giving 100% is still very generic. So we need to be very, very detailed in the way that we answer this question. What exactly does best mean? What does it mean to be the best to lead the team to achieve the best target? So we have someone who says, able to align your own values to create synergy for the company. This is a good specific one. And also consistently demonstrating a combination of strong job performance, essential management competency, and alignment with the company's culture and future needs. That's very good. That's a very integrated way to look at how best means. Ability to learn new skills. Yes, that is also one of the key traits of best. And then must be able to have a helicopter view, which is very, very good. So, a manager needs to step away from the details and kind of move up and see how the whole structure actually works, which is very, very descriptive of what the situation is. Recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of the team, which is going to lead me to my very next point of what does best mean. So without further ado, I'm just going to move over to the next slide already. Thank you for your contribution. The best manager is a world-class Tetris grandmaster. So if you look at certain people and their skill sets, a good Tetris grandmaster is somebody who figures out, okay, this guy is good in legal, only legal, like just stick him in legal, right? But then there's this other guy who is a PR specialist, but has some technology background in his PR world. So, now I'm going to stack him into, the blue Tetris is going to come down, right? And going to fill the whole set and breadth to build that rectangle that I need for the core skills that I need, and against, sort of like a structured, everybody interlacing a little bit here and there, knowing a little bit here and there. So, if you are a tech guy who also does a bit of sales, so you're the red Tetris. So if you're the red Tetris, I want to bring you on because, you're a tech guy that can do sales, that's fantastic, breadth and depth of skills, right? And then I'm going to bring in someone who knows a bit of HR and a bit of sales. And then these are the top-notch people that once I Tetris this entire thing together, then I have that core competency skill sets where everyone has a bit of touch point to each other and they can help guide each other because the interdepartmental collaboration would be the strongest. So what is the kind of skill set that you kind of need. So say the best manager in the world-class Tetris grandmaster is somebody who essentially knows a little bit of everything and everyone, right? So a lot of breadth, just knows networks and knows skills, two things. So breadth, and then knowing how to find the right people to fill in the gaps of your competencies. So interviewing and networking skills. And also knowing at a strategic level how to fit and how to time the time to bring in the correct type of people. Maybe you don't need a PR guy now. Maybe you need a PR guy in 3 years, but you need to plan for this in your budget. So a good tactical boss can Tetris a team inside a company. A good strategic boss can Tetris external partners, customers, and suppliers. So essentially, what I believe makes up the best manager is somebody who understands how to Tetris. So with this, I move on to a quick summary. So, what does that mean to be a good manager? You need to speak up, you need to question, you need to anticipate and redefine your status quo and not just follow. I know that in the chat box just now, somebody, there were a few people saying that, yes, but that also depends on your senior bosses and whatever. And I agree with that. I really agree with that. Um, because you don't want to get fired trying to challenge the authority and stuff like that as well. So that's why I also say that leadership is also sometimes you have to give and take, right? Because it depends on your circumstances, it depends on whatever. But you're going to realize that if you are the manager that's always so scared to go up and say that something is wrong, we need this particular resource, we cannot keep using this software because it doesn't work, then ask yourself, are you really a good manager? Did you fight for your people? Because you were so afraid to go up your authority and, to go to your authority to say that this is not working. You're not able to clearly explain why it's not working. You're not able to put in the financial justification of how doing things one way could possibly be better. Then were you a good manager? Right? So you can always blame everything around you. And this is what I often see around managers, which is they're not understanding what they're really supposed to be doing. And then they think that they're just taking instructions and giving instructions, taking instructions from the top and giving instructions further down. And that kind of like trickles down that bad toxic culture. And to me, if you're a manager in a bad toxic culture, to me, what's stopping you from moving on to another company where you could be better developed as a manager? So, then the second point is to build new networks and breadth of skills. So remember that breadth includes networks and skills. And this is the only way in which you can build a good team by becoming a Tetris grandmaster of breadth and depth of roles. And then you find a way to build up that triangular thing. What I've started to realize is that a lot of job descriptions, when they write, it is so specific sometimes that, this particular person needs to be able to do like these 20 softwares and stuff like that, which to me, this is why there's this epidemic of people not being able to find people to fit the roles, which you're looking for too much depth, and people often don't come in that one long triangle. This is very, very hard to find. So if you can find someone to fit like that, a yellow Tetris, or like your red Tetris earlier, then a little bit of people knowing a little bit of everything, then you can segment the roles to suit each person's skill set. And to me, this makes a better manager rather than someone who just throws their hands up in the air, always going, I cannot find people. I cannot find people to do the job, and it's so difficult and blah, blah, blah. You can easily solve that problem by rewriting your JDs, by rewriting certain things, by reprogramming the way in which your department runs, because ultimately you are the person responsible for your own department's KPIs. So stop the complaining, start learning how to Tetris. And then the last thing is if you're exhibiting toxic behavior, consider therapy, because nobody else can help you with toxic behavior. You have to understand how that came about and why you're constantly putting people down, why you're always blaming people for your own problems and stuff like that, and why you're always being very negative around things. Then that would be something that you're going to have to deal with on your own. So this is the quick summary so far of what it means to be good boss. So now, another key question for you, which is for middle managers. Now I'm just talking about tactical. Okay. What do you think is an ideal team size for you? So for this question, put your MCQ questions in the Menti, and then again, explain your answer in the Zoom chat. So Eng Li says that it depends on the scope of work, correct? Uh, depends on the industry and the functions in the team. I love it how you're now questioning the question. So thank you very much, Cindy and Lily. Um, so it depends on a lot of things. But in your opinion, what is the right answer for your particular role? So just put that one in. So most people are coming up with about 6 to 10, and some are saying 1 to 5. So it is kind of correct, right? In the sense of, in a factory, where the factory manager is actually not doing any of the factory work, maybe he can take on more people. He can do like 20. In more professional settings where you are actually doing some of the work as well, then you cannot have as much management oversight, and then maybe it's more 1 to 5. So yes, like everybody says here, it depends. Um, so it over here, let me check so Tayson says that 6 to 10, because as there are enough members to delegate the right roles and responsibilities, without much conflict or stress, it's easier to come to an agreement. I also agree that 6 to 10 is actually a very good number for coming to agreements, because anything more, too many views, it becomes a lot tougher to get balance. So 1 to 5 for direct report is easier to prioritize, says Yu Xuan. And then so Lily says that budget also plays a part, which is correct. So this brings me to my next concept, which is job design and time allocation. So how do you decide how many people you can actually have in your team so that you can basically manage? So if we were to think about this in terms of job design, so for job design, you need to first decide how much depth of work do you need to still do as a manager. So if you're sitting lower down in your hierarchy in tactical, you might still need to do a lot of coding as a developer. You're doing some coding, and then you're, managing some other junior developers. And if you sit higher on tactical, maybe you do less coding work. What you need to know is how many hours do you personally need to work, and how much time is then left to manage people. So this brings us to the second concept, which is time allocation. So in 1 week, you have 40 hours of work. If we implement a continuous improvement culture, like at Google, and say we implement a 80-20 rule instead of a 70-30 rule at Google. So let's say we implement an 80-20 rule, which allows 20% of our time to be used for improvement projects and overruns. This would leave 80% of our 40 hours, which is 32 hours. So if we were to have 32 hours to work with, if the middle manager needs about 22 hours in a single week to do work, that leaves him only with 10 hours to manage people. So now I ask you, how much oversight is needed for each team member? So it really depends on how junior, how senior these guys are, how much oversight they actually need. Because some people only need like a 10-minute check-in a week. Some people need a 1 hour long one-to-one meeting every single week. So let's say that our people need a 1 hour long one-to-one meeting every single week to check in. And then I personally need another 1 hour per team member just to do admin stuff like, time off, budgeting, writing performance reviews, and stuff like that. So this means it takes me 2 hours of oversight per team member. So if I only have 10 hours left to do people management, that means I can only manage reasonably 5 team members. So if you calculate your job design down to this, then you will reasonably understand how many people you can actually manage. So this is the essence of job design and time allocation. So a good manager looks at job design of their own roles, and a good manager looks at the roles, the job design of the roles of their team members, so that, you just look at the time, and then you can figure out how much things can be done within that time, so that you don't set impossible targets for yourself, and then you don't set impossible targets for your team, and leading to everybody burning out and just constantly having high turnover rates, because high turnover rates makes you have to waste another 20% of your time to go and do interviews and, write JDs and whatever. So you're not spending it on productive work. So what you want to do is not have burnout. Everybody having that, if you don't put in this 80-20 or 70-30 rule to ensure that there's actually time to do improvement projects, then which salesperson basically has the time to write your SOPs after they already handled the clients for 42 hours already? So job design is very important. And I'm going to ask you, let's answer this question again. So how many people make up the ideal team size for the middle manager? And the answer is it depends, like everyone has said here, which is really, really good. It depends on the job design and how much depth you personally as a manager still need to do. And then it depends on the time allocation, which is how much oversight each of your team members need. If your team is made out of a lot of interns, then maybe you need 5 hours per staff because you need 1 hour a day, so you need 5 hours a week. But then if you have like, team members who are extremely experienced, you don't really need that much touch point. It's just to, have one, team meeting every single week to say, okay, everybody, talk about what, you're going to do. Then it's basically only 1 hour of oversight for the entire team. Then, maybe you can take on more. But when you have an ideal number in mind, then be prepared that this number will change and it will adjust according to exigent circumstances. So let's say one team member suddenly had a heart attack. How will your team currently cover? Because you need your 70-80, your 70-30 rule or your 80-20 rule to basically help with these kinds of circumstances. So it's basically down to risk management now. So say your sales volume picked up suddenly. Did you plan for an uptake? Can you tolerate a Christmas surge, for, all the gifting, and then, suddenly the sales goes up, and then can your people package the stuff in time to send it out? So it's important to plan buffers in any role. So choose the 70-30 or the 80-20 so that you can take on changes, so that, essentially if there's no change, then you can tell your staff, use that time for improvement projects, write new email templates for customers, improve the processes, learn new automation tech. And then that way, you don't have people burning out all the time and you just wasting a lot of time trying to do rehiring and, dealing with, firings and stuff like that. So in general, I would say that for a professional role, most managers should not take on more than 6 in one team. Because if there is more people in the department, say 20 staff, then what you want to do is maybe consider 3 tactical managers for this team to effectively be effective. And then you promote yourself up to a certain level where you are just managing the 3 tactical managers. And then the 3 tactical managers then onward manages another 6. So to me, the ideal is about 1-to-6 ratio. And then if I cannot handle it anymore, then the 6 that are under me is actually tactical managers so that they are then handling the operational. And this was something that I did with Tech Sailor because at that point in time, there were 3 directors basically managing 50 staff. And to me, that ratio was so off that the directors didn't have time to do any of their own strategic work. So what I then did was I made the 3 directors handle 6 middle managers. I brought in the 6 middle managers myself, and then I trained them on management skills. And then the managers then onward dealt with the 50 operational staff that we had. So essentially, you need to realize that it's a ratio problem. Once you've done your job design of certain roles, you'll be able to understand what the ratios are. And then you'll be able to understand how to run the time allocation so that not everyone is burning out. So with that, I would like you to do a case study. So with all the concepts that we've learned, can you please tell me how you will answer this case study? So put your answer in the Zoom chat, please, or just unmute yourself and talk to me because, I expect that you're managers and you have the natural ability to speak comfortably. So the key point here is that in the case, it says there are 50 snipers. So there are 50 snipers. You are the military commander. You are trying to select a leader for the sniper team, and you've been presented with the 2 best candidates. So there's Owen, who is a, freaking good marksman, and he can read the enemy's mind. He's very good at, building winning strategies, but he prefers to be independent. He doesn't like to talk to people. He goes home straight after training every day. He doesn't drink beer with, his buddies, right? So he's not a people person. Then there's Jeffrey, who has, a really crappy sniper score. Chances are if he shoots, someone's going to find your team and then they're going to shoot you to death. But he is very good at reading the enemy's mind. And he is very good at building winning strategies. But he loves to drink beer with everyone, hang out with his, teammates after a hard day's work. Now, there are 50 snipers, and I would like you to build me a strategy to tell me that who are you going to select as your best manager? So, Christine, Poe, and Charlie and Jeff. Everyone is picking Jeffrey. Uh, so again, everyone says Jeffrey. Thank you, WL. Right answer there. So the question is, the correct answer is both. Because I keep saying here that the key point here is there are 50 snipers. Can Jeffrey himself handle 50 people? It's a bit much. So if we were to say, split it down to, we want to select both, then who is the tactical manager and who is the strategic manager here? Okay, so SC basically answered this question already, which is very good, which is he says that one is the technical trainer and the other one is the military leader, which is correct. So when you are looking at a situation like this, remember that it all boils down to the circumstances. And then the way that you approach a question is that you need to see the big picture, which is one person cannot handle 50 people. So if you're told to select the best manager, I would promote both. It's just that on an IT level, I would say that Owen would become the senior developer, and then Jeffrey would become the IT lead, where he is actually managing the project and the people and everything. Whereas, Owen as a senior developer is improving the technical skills of everybody in the team. So that's very, very good. So now moving on with our next slide. Um, So after hearing all about good traits of a good boss, I would now speak more about what they actually need to do, which is building the working environment using this thing called PTSTC, and then the overarching risk governance that oversees the entire PTSTC. So PTSTC is very simple. It essentially means process, templates, systems, training, and the communications matrix. And when you say PTSDC plus governance, it makes up the whole concept of management science. So when you go to a university and you're studying management science, you are literally studying this too, because then you're managing risks and creating the working environment. So now we've talked about what it means to become a manager. As a manager, what are you supposed to do? So a good boss is someone who's a master Tetris grandmaster. So they put together a team of the right people with the right skill set, and they put them in the right working environment made up of the correct type of PTSTC so that they can operate within a certain number of rules. And then what they do is they have the management oversight via the risk governance. So in part one today, we have addressed the whole Tetris Grandmaster concept. And in part two next week, this is what we're going to delve into, which is the working environment and how to write the working environment and how to use AI to prompt, how to do certain types of templates, how to create training programs, and how to use, how to create, a communication matrix, how often to update that. So with that, I'm going to move into my summaries. So okay, so essentially, what does it mean to be an effective middle manager? So you hire for the correct skill, the network, and the mindset, and then you redesign your team size. So if you think your team is too big already, then pick senior people to manage the junior people, and then you just manage the senior people. And then what you do is you're writing all these processes to say that, okay, now instead of reporting to me, you report to this other person who is also under me so that I just handle this person. And then I train them on managerial skills. Or you can bring me in to train you on managerial skills as well. So you redesign your team size, you redesign the way in which you do oversight, right? And then you redesign the way in which you incentivize your team. So sometimes it's not really just about money. Sometimes people want to learn new things. They want to be able to pick up new certifications. Sometimes they just want more time. So you can actually afford to say that, hey, if you do this for me, I give you 2 work from home days instead of 1 work from home days. And you're giving them time. And then a good effective middle manager as well is to promote interdepartmental working. So you don't just manage your own department. You actually have them talk to the sales department to tell them all the problems that sales has caused them, because essentially, I'm a developer. When you are passing me, customer feedback, don't pass it to me this way, write it in a certain style, take screenshots, because without the screenshots, I don't know where to go and debug, for example. So you promote interdepartmental working. And then also what you need to do is you need to, if you decide that you're going to put in one more layer because you right now manage 50 people. So if you're going to put in one more layer, then what you need to do is you need to provide effective middle management training. So you train your people how to manage the people onwards. And then you emphasize continuous improvement, because that 80-20 rule and that 70-30 rule cannot be overlooked, because no one is going to contribute to your PTSTC building if essentially they don't have time to do it. And then what you do is you build a working environment. So that's the effective middle manager. But in general, the rules for an effective leader is that you speak up, you anticipate, and you redefine your status quo. And then, if you're afraid to talk to your seniors, there's always monetary justification. If you can tell them that if we do it this way, it will save you, 10% of, the current budget and stuff like that, I don't think that anyone's going to say no to more money, right? So it's just about understanding the thing that drives your senior management, and then to be able to find the way to do the correct kind of speaking. And if you want to learn more about professional networking and how to influence, then you can attend my next networking workshop, which we just did one last year, like near the last quarter of last year. So it should probably come up again, middle of this year or somewhere there. But essentially, you need to build kind of like new networks as well. You need to, whether it's internally or externally, because it just makes your job easier. If you already have coffee with the HR person and then you need them to, process something really, really quickly, it is so much easier to pick up the phone and, hey, Sharon, please help, man, help. I really need this done. Guess what? With that personal relationship, it just, things just escalates quicker, and things just move quicker. So if you want to be a really good manager, you need to be, really buddy with all the other interdepartmental heads, because then it just makes things smoother and quicker. So if you then develop management skills and know a little bit of everything, then it helps you to Tetris better, because you cannot Tetris what you do not know exists. So you need to know a little bit about everything. What does it mean to do a bit of HR? What does it mean to do about a little bit of budgeting? Just know a little bit about everything, so that when something goes wrong, you know that it feels wrong. And then you'll be able to call another HR person to say that, another HR friend to say, hey, my HR just told me this. Does this feel right or wrong? So if you have management skills, a little bit of everything, a little everyone, then you know how to solve problems by calling the correct professional to ask for advice on how to deal with your situation. And then again, I always say that if you're exhibiting toxic behavior, no management training is going to help you. You actually need therapy. And then you need to understand job design and to redefine jobs based on the time that you allocate to those roles. And then what I encourage you to do is to promote continuous improvement culture, like the 80-20 or the 70-30 rule. And then finally, what you're supposed to do as a manager is to build the working environment with PTSTC, and to provide the oversight with sort of like risk governance controls. So the ultimate thing with when you're a good manager is that if you were to hire 50 people next week and you wanted all of them to enter the business and perform at peak levels quickly, you have to ask yourself what sort of training programs, what sort of processes, what sort of templates and systems and communication matrix that you have in order for that to basically happen. Because if you have nothing written down, then essentially all you're doing is, personally sitting down with every single person one-on-one to kind of like show them how certain things are done. And if you don't document as you go, you realize that you're not scalable. Every single time you have a new employee coming in, you cannot scale. You're just literally just training, retraining, and you're just constantly spending your time doing that. Especially in a high turnover situation, it is really, really difficult if you don't have those SOPs in place. So what I highly recommend for you to do as a manager is to document everything as you go and leave nothing or very little to the imagination. then you don't have situations like malicious compliance because these are things that are written down. You're not supposed to do this. If you're in compliance and the number has exceeded and the trader's trade has exceeded 80% and he wasn't allowed to exceed 80% of the assets, then essentially you need to telephone him within 2 minutes. And if the employee only telephones him 10 minutes later, that is a serious violation because if you don't write it down, that's not a violation. But if you write it down, then that's the law that they have to follow. So essentially, you document as you go, you write down your SOPs, and that makes a good manager because essentially that's the thing that they read when they come in. And then you don't have to talk to them about it. It's just something that they read on their own. They onboard themselves. And that's how, this onboarding process is very important for you to think about how you would train new people. And then that's how you would think about how you would write your SOPs. So we're going to do a little bit of homework for next week, which is I want you to design an onboarding email. So for your industry, your job, your role, okay? So it's just catered to you. So what needs to be captured in an onboarding plan? So what I want you to do is plan for this thing called day 0 email, day 1 email, and day 2 email. And I want it to be what I call touch-free. And I want the email to be written in such a way that it is essentially you don't need to sit with the employee. The employee is just reading the email, following the instructions, and essentially you are out of the picture completely. And this is what I call a very scalable onboarding training. So day 0 email, what would be things inside a day 0 email? It would be things like, okay, this is how you get to the office on the day. On the day when you get to the office, this is how you log into our Wi-Fi. This is how you get your access pass. You would go to the security guard and essentially, pick up your security pass there. So day 0 emails would be things like how to get started on the first day, right? And then sometimes for Made Without Borders, for example, we would tell our employees to write their own bio, and then we'll give them an example on LinkedIn to say we always say that this employee just started with us. So we always do that kind of emails. And then we ask for like a photograph. So we will already tell them to prepare that personal photograph that they want to and, a bio about themselves. And then we give them examples of how our employees did it. So we'll send them the links to the LinkedIn post that we've done. And that's all in the day 0 email. So think about for your circumstances, what would a day 0 email look like? Right? You would even do things like how to park your car or, when you come through the MRT station, turn left, and that's the shortcut to get to the office, that kind of stuff. Those will all go into day 0 email. What is in a day 1 email would be things like, okay, now set up your email access, set up all your systems access, and then send your bio and your photo to the marketing person who will put it up on LinkedIn, and then you're expected to get added to the WhatsApp groups for this group, this group, this group, or your internal chat groups, and then you're supposed to attend this meeting, this meeting, this meeting on day 1. So that's just the day 1 emails. Just how do you set up your emails? How do you do whatever? You could even get as detailed as this is our company email signature that you're supposed to also put into the email. So, day 1, they're just doing it there. And day 2 would be all the training that they're going to need for, essentially what it takes to do their job. So for the whole week. So day 2 would be things like, okay, you've already set up your emails and everything. So now we're going to send you the training program. So what I like to do is I like to collect some LinkedIn tutorials. So if I know that my marketing person is going to be dealing with Figma or Canva, then what I would do is I'll put in expert tutorial on Figma and Canva on YouTube. And I'll just tell them your second day all the way to the 5th day, all I want you to do is to watch YouTube videos, and I want you to download Figma and Canva, and I want you to play around with it in your own personal account before you come in to screw up our corporate Figma account. So just learning, playing, fiddling with the system. And I will also, send them some training tutorials on, all the other things that is required, like, for example, Microsoft Expert PowerPoint skills, for example. So it's all dedicated down to who is and what role and what they need to do. And I'll send out all the training videos, and that's all YouTube videos, so it's nothing to do with me. Or if there's very specific system related one, I would do a screen recording, and I'll do a voiceover on the video, and I'll say, okay, now for our internal systems, this is how we do this. This is how we process a claim. So if it's like insurance claims and stuff, it's all done on video. And then I'll be like, okay, touch this one. You can touch this button. Do not touch this button. Or when you press this button, it will escalate to three other departments. So that's only if all else fails, press this button. That kind of stuff. So you would write down the entire SOP, you record the entire video recording, and then you put that down into day two. And those are all links to essentially videos so that they can self-train, they're on their own, and you don't have to deal with them until 1 week later, and then they come fully trained. This would be much, much more effective. And then when they see that you have organized their day down to this hour, this is what you're supposed to do, this hour, this is what you're supposed to do, then essentially they're like, wow, so this is the standard in which I'm supposed to operate that as well. So you set the standard for how they're supposed to behave. So then you set the standard for how they're supposed to document along the way. And at the end of the first week of the onboarding, you can even have a day 5 email to say, now I want you to give me feedback on everything that had gone wrong with day 0, day 1, day 2, and tell me what were the issues when you were reading this email and we tell you to set up your emails. If you had met with whatever problems, let us know so we can improve the day 1, day 2 emails, right? So I always ask for a day 5 email as well to essentially ask for improvements. And then I'll have the relevant departments, improve on the way in which we write things so that the next person that we onboard will not have that same problem. So remember, document as you go. Every time an employee asks you a question, determine whether or not this needs to go into some kind of training document. So every time a mistake is made by your operational staff, ask yourself, do you need to change the PTSTC? So leave nothing or very little to the imagination. So I want you to design an onboarding email for your own circumstances so that next week, this is the case study. So you need to have already thought about this, okay? So finally, in conclusion of the good boss versus bad boss, I want you to consider this, which is don't aim to be a boss that is liked because you are setting yourself up for failure. You are a manager, you will make good and bad decisions, and you will make very difficult decisions against a set of all bad choices. So the key difference here between the manager with longevity versus the one that actually burns out is the one that seeks to be respected versus the one that seeks to be everybody's friend. So here's what I hope you will aim for instead, which is seek to be respected, not to be liked, and be a coach, not a boss, because a good manager is a mere facilitator. A good manager makes mistakes and admits it without losing face. And the only way to achieve this is to have some kind of humility so you don't set yourself up for failure. So before I open this for Q&A, I want to point you to the QR code, which is my link tree here. So for you to do a few things. First, I want to encourage you to add me on LinkedIn, which is one of the most important social tools available to managers. I think the very first box in my link tree is already my LinkedIn. So whenever I am personally stuck with an odd managerial conundrum, I often find myself just finding mentors on LinkedIn to kind of just direct message. And I'll just say that, hey, I'm having this situation. Can I just ask, if you are the one solving the problem, how would you solve this problem? So you surround yourself with good bosses on LinkedIn, and then you just, throw that same question to 10 managers, and then maybe about 4 will respond. And then from there, that gives you guidance on how best to operate. So remember to add me on LinkedIn. And of course, the second thing is if you're looking for mates, do sign up to our mailing list because this is the last month before we're closing the thing for the golden voucher. And we're going into launch mode soon. So we still have some limited super vouchers to give away. And I assure you, we don't spam you weekly. So if you're looking for mates and you don't want to use agents, then go ahead and sign up on our thing as well. So that link is also on my link tree. And the third thing here is that there is only one feedback form to fill in now. So people who have typically attended my previous sessions, there were two feedback forms. Now there's only one, which is the NLB feedback form. And Priya is going to show you the link for the NLB feedback form. And you do need to fill that out and give me a raving review if you want NLB to call me back to basically teach more workshops. I need to reach my stars. And then the fourth thing is after this Q&A, you will be given the link for the quiz. So again, do forgive me for not making this a super easy quiz, because for this to be used for the SG Founders Grant, we do have to have a minimum standard of understanding of the course. But I do assure you it is not difficult to it's not easy either, but it's not difficult. Just do your best, and it's just a 50% pass rate. So go ahead and try. And without further ado, let's kickstart this Q&A. So if you have any questions, just type it into the Zoom chat, and even better, if you unmute yourself and speak to me so that it is less lonely for me here.
Hey, Juliet, it's Kerry here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Gary.
Thanks for the great session. Lots and lots of good tips. Hey, Mike, if I kick off the questions, first one is, first question I have is just building on your comment around managers, leaders with toxic behavior, and then you're saying consider therapy. Okay, what are some options there? Is that like a psychologist? Is that psychiatrist? Is that like a coach or an executive coach? I'm intrigued to kind of hear what your thoughts are around that. And then how do you broach the subject, I guess,
Yes.
with the person? Yeah.
So that's a fantastic question, Carrie. So, in my limited knowledge of, the mental health world, I think that there are certain things that we do that are, because of the way that we were raised as children, and we see authority in a certain manner. There are certain things that, were passed on, that if we don't break that chain, that we would not be able to then become a better version of ourselves. So I would say that the first approach I would usually go to is you can either use a therapist or a coach. I would only go to like an actual real doctor, which is like a psychologist, if I think I need medication for depression or schizophrenia, for example. But if I wanted talking therapy, just a one-to-one kind of like to talk it out with somebody that is professional, that can, sort of like framework around why they think that I'm going down a trajectory because of some of my past trauma or things like that, then I would go to a therapist. A training coach is somebody who's not medically trained. So I don't know whether Joel, are you still on the call? Because it would be good to
Yeah.
hear from you.
Hello.
Joel is a therapist. So Kerry, he's the best person to answer this.
Yeah, I
Nice,
think like
nice one.
what Julia said. The reason I became a therapist is because I also struggle with issues with authority. I think um we in Singapore we get very scared of authority because of the way our parents punished us. And then that's why it makes us, like just now what Juliet said, it makes us very, even there's no consequences of talking to your bosses about like, oh, this plan is wrong, we can fix this. But inside there is this emotional charge where it really pulls us back. No, we shouldn't talk, even though there's no real world consequences. So that's why therapy kind of like helps you to release all these emotional baggage and frees you from all these chains. Yeah. I can leave my contact if you want.
Joel, what is the difference then between going to a therapist versus going to a management coach?
Therapist versus management coach. I do not. Okay, wait. My girlfriend goes to a management coach.
So she doesn't use you.
Sorry?
So she doesn't use you.
I think a bit a bit. But I would say from her experience, I think a management coach is more
skills,
hard skill.
how to deal with that block in the emotional side.
maybe more to do with skills, maybe on the outer, what to do, what to say, is a bit more direct, whereas therapy is a bit more gentle, a bit more like uh insight driven, a bit more where did this come from? How can we management coaching is more skills. Therapy is more inner work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I agree with Joe, but I don't think it's more gentle. I actually think
Mm.
that, what we do, what therapists do is that they dig harder into why you're doing the things that you're doing. Whereas management coaches are more to do with how uh, to do it better. So it's management coaches will say, okay, instead of saying this, why don't say that? But it's all to me, it's still very
Mm.
superficial on this
Yeah.
line. Whereas therapy really digs into why are you doing it this way? Why can't you do it this other way? Why can't you see other dimensions and stuff? So for me, my approach would always be, for me personally, I also go through therapy sessions as well, just to break through certain things that, to me, I can't even see past this lens. And therapy is
Mm.
very good at breaking through those lenses. Whereas coaches are better at sort of like, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Just, as a very generic kind of like, opening you up to more opportunities. So I think it's a more why versus how. So Carrie, did we actually answer this question for you?
Yeah, no, it's good, and I guess don't want to hold up the thing, but yeah, I think it's worthwhile having sort of a side discussion on this. So no, it's good. Thanks, Juliet.
Um, thank you. So I wanted to get through some of the ones that are showing up on the chat already. So regarding team planning, what can we do as managers depends on senior management and the resources they have allocated and the budget available. How do we navigate around this? So again, it all comes down to these type of things. It's not a short-term policy. These are what we call long-term policies. The way that you learn how to talk to your senior managers to fight for resources and stuff depends on the culture of your department. And what I like to do is I like to, when I see certain things, so MNCs will operate very differently from SMEs in terms of the way that you ask for resources and things like that. And the speed at which you get your resources is also very different. So you need to plan for these things. How you navigate around this is to first, foremost, build very good relationships with your boss so that you are literally talking to them like they are your friend, and say and just keep reminding them of the issues, like one day just have tea and coffee to say that, hey, sometimes I really wonder how you want me to do my job when you don't give me this system and that system, when we are saying to you that you can save money. We can save 2 headcount if you essentially brought on this AI system and you don't even let us try. So what is so difficult to let us try? So that there's always a trying budget. So I would cycle your top senior manager to open up a trying budget first, just for innovation and trying stuff. So you have a budget that you can always park your weird expenses to, and then essentially try and move them down that direction. But of course, in MNC terms, we're talking about, 2 to 3 years before you even get there. But you have to plan your way into getting there. And then for, startups and for SMEs, of course, it's a little bit more mobile. And the way that you ask for things, you might not get it this round. You might get it on the next quarter. You might get it 3 quarters later. But the thing is, you need to pre-plan. You need to keep putting through, this is why I think it should be done. Put it through your justifications, understand what drives your own boss. So remember that management skills also requires you to understand how to manage your senior stakeholders. Nitin, I hope that I answered that question. For WL, he says, thoughts on team bonding. How do you manage team members who find it cringe to gel with the rest of the group and who are seemingly lone wolves? Or generational divides between young and elderly employees. Then I ask you this question, is it really that important? So people that, don't want to gel with the rest of the team, to me, these came from past experiences when they gelled with the other staff, and then they got burnt from it. So I think a lot of times is, why don't you sit down and talk to them to ask them why are they not talking to people? And if generally some of these people are like, asking coders to go out and drink and try and love each other. It's to me sometimes there are more inward people, there are more introverted people rather than extroverted people. So how much extroversion do you need in a team? You don't always need the hurrah kind of vibe within a team. What you need to do is to understand every single one of your team members and learn how to sort of, essentially get the team dynamic right. And the team dynamic doesn't always have to be sociable. To me, I have operated within certain teams where they don't really talk to each other unless it is absolutely necessary. And actually, those teams were extremely effective at getting their jobs done. So those that are overly social as well, then how do you manage around the overly social? To deal with generational divide, to me, you have to understand what exactly do you want them to socialize over. So, for Chinese New Year party, if you're saying that, if you come to, the Chinese New Year reunion dinner, it usually doesn't work because people have families that they have to go home to, they have kids that they have to look after. So instead of a dinner, convert it to a lunch if you want everybody to show up. And if you want people to show up, then incentivize it. So say that you don't get your New Year's ang pao unless you are at the New Year's dinner or the New Year's lunch. Well, suddenly everyone's going to show up, right? So it's all down to design, job design, situational design, and so incentivizing people with the correct stuff. But don't always see social as something that is truly important because social can really bite back as well. When someone has a very bad experience with a manager, the rumors that go around quickly are in the context of when cultures are very sociable. So actually, sometimes that, distinct and keeping people apart may not be a bad thing as well. So don't see it as a bad thing per se. I hope I answered that question. Um, so, Corinne says only a psychologist can prescribe medication. Oh, okay. That one is on that last one. Where can we find information about the networking workshop? So that networking one hasn't come up yet. The next one after Good Boss versus Bad Boss is actually hired versus get hired. So it's about teaching you how to do hiring and how to get hired to see it from two different perspectives. And that one will be coming in end of February. So we will have the links for you to sign up by next week in part 2. Joe says, what's the name of the grant? The grant is SG Founders Grant, and this is because of this Good Boss versus Bad Boss is under this umbrella called Corporate to Entrepreneur series under NLB. And in the Corporate to Entrepreneur series, we're teaching people how to freelance, how to sort of set up your own businesses. And so previously, people were saying that they need to prove that they're doing some kind of entrepreneurial learning workshops and stuff in order for them to qualify for the SG Founders Grant. And in my last conversation with Enterprise Singapore, they are going to open up this 50K grant for people who essentially have shown that they've done some kind of entrepreneurial training. Previously, that was only possible if you signed up for like incubation centers with SUSS, NTU, NUS, that kind of stuff. But right now, they are open to also looking at external certificates like this, which is why for the first time this year, I've decided to issue certificates for this. So this is the SG Founders Grant. If you're looking to get 50,000 and you've never been a director before, you've never started up your own businesses before, you can go ahead and apply for this 50,000 for you to start your business.
Just to double confirm, right? So it's a Startup SG Founder Grant.
So it's a SG Founders Grant by Enterprise Singapore.
Enterprise Singapore.
Mhm.
What I found is startupsg.gov.sg.
Okay.
Is that the same?
Is it the 50K one?
Yeah, it says 50K,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the founder need to contribute like 30% equity or something.
So they have like all these different new things that are going on right now, but of course you need to put in some money before the government will match your money.
Yeah, so it's a
You get what
matching.
I'm
Yeah.
saying? So,
Okay. So it looks like the
I mean,
same.
it's
Yeah.
impossible to start your own business without putting in some of your own money to begin with. So you kind of have to put in a little bit first, and then they will help with the next set of things. So to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
your grants
Yeah.
through Enterprise Singapore is always a matching thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It does make sense. Okay.
Yeah. So if you have
Just
more
want to
question
be
about
double
the
sure.
SG Founders Grant and stuff, you can ask during the clinic that's happening on the 7th of February, because we have the Business Strategy Advisory Clinic, and that's used to answer these types of questions.
Right. Okay.
Juliet, this is
Yes.
Yushen, and
Yushen, nice to meet you.
yeah, thank you. Last time we meet in person during your business advisor program, and I remember last session your um resilience workshop about you talk about the current trend, Singapore is very hard for the fresh grads to find the job, and with the AI and all these knowledge and skills especially knowledge, can be very easy to be gained in YouTube or online or through those different models of the AI. There is a very popular concept recently called one person company, meaning that one single person can be sales, marketing, finance, and the content creator. And also, I do believe it's a era of evolution with all these skills, and in the future, we might not have those permanent work, but instead it will be replaced with those short-term program, or we are outsourced with the third party, or outsourced with the AI agent.
So to answer this question, because it is very, very wide, yes, that we are having trouble with the fresh graduate thing, which is why I am writing a whole new concept called hire versus get hired, which is, to try and get people to realize that, when you write your JDs, don't write it so specific until you always cannot find people. And then, the get hired part, which is how in the world are you going to prove as a person that just graduated that you have some working experience? Like, it is like a chicken and egg story all the time. So I hope to address that during hire versus get hired. So do attend that session. It's coming up at the end of February. But the fresh graduate unemployment rate was the employment rate for fresh graduates was recently announced by Straits Times, and it was 51.9%. That leaves 48.9% unemployed, which is ridiculous because it is almost half the cohort that cannot find jobs right now. And we're also seeing the trickle in because the corporate to entrepreneurs program was supposed to help the over 40s that got let go. And then, early last year, we started seeing the early 30s trickling in. And then now we're starting to see fresh grads trickling in as well. So it is a very difficult job market right now. The whole concept of what you spoke about, the one person show, the one person company, I always see all these, YouTube videos of, oh, with AI, this is possible, that's possible. I think that these people are, small scale entrepreneurs, right? So like, everything in the past, yes, I agree that there are, AI has helped us to not have to hire 20 people to do one job. But essentially, it is still not a situation if you want to scale. So, if you are a freelancer and you just need to write a legal contract for your client, yes, you can do that using ChatGPT. You don't have to hire a lawyer, right? But what kind of contract are you going to get from ChatGPT? There is no advice. It is not applied to the Singapore law sometimes. ChatGPT can hallucinate, so you don't know what kind of weird stuff comes up in your clauses. So, yes, you can do it, but then you're not managing the risks, which is what managerial skills are supposed to be. You're supposed to manage risks, and that's why you go and see a lawyer, because you want to make sure that all your terms are legally correct. And then the way that you implement certain things as well, like for example, marketing. Yes, it is true that right now, like for example, even with Made Without Borders, we're just using a lot of AI to generate some of our videos. So you can see that we had a whole Auntie Maggie series, which is supposed to nag people into doing certain things, for mates, and for mates to think about the consequences of doing certain things. And so we have like this very naggy auntie that does all these things for us. But essentially, how far can an AI thing push? You know, sometimes when you look on YouTube and you're like scrolling and you can see that this is an AI avatar, already you're not interested in looking at it. So there are consequences of using AI, but you know, you have to understand the ROI behind every decision that you make. At what point in time are you going to stop using an AI thing to draft your contracts? At what point in time are you going to go to a lawyer, right? At what point in time does that risk become too big and you actually have to use a professional? So AI, yes, it is helpful. And I think the industry is starting to realize that as well. Because at first, when they started doing all the AI firings and they go like, oh, you know, now we can fire 90% of our staff because AI can do everything, they're starting to realize, no, AI cannot do everything. And then they have to hire back everybody. So it's just, we're in this flux of a moment right now. And every single generation calls themselves the era of evolution. So to me, this is just another situation where things are changing. And that's why as a manager, you need to be very agile. You need to figure out for the circumstances that you have right now, for the tools that you have right now. So before I start firing people going like, oh, you know, Sora can create all my AI videos, InVideo can create all my AI videos. Before I start firing everybody, I better have tested, you know, InVideo, and I better have tested Sora to make sure that it is indeed able to generate the types of videos that I want, right? So what we have realized is that Sora can generate certain types of videos, but the stitching together of all the different components, because when you ask Sora to generate a 3-minute video, it starts hallucinating some real crazy stuff, you know. But if you tell it to do 10-second elements, you can actually cut and paste the elements together. So we still need the people to do the cutting and pasting of all the elements together. So, you know, Made Without Borders cannot run solely on, you know, AI. So we still have 10 staff that sort of operates around the entire thing. But then we use AI so that we don't need 50 staff. So does that answer that question?
Yes, thank you, Juliet. And
No
also
problem.
during your time in answering is when because AI think it threatens those people are in the operational side, ops side a lot because it needs a lot of knowledge skills. But like the entry level SME might not entry level like fresh grad for ops might not be able to compete with AI. So how do those people can do a smooth transition or do the proper upskill for ops to tactical, from tactical to strategic?
Yushen, I'm going to talk about this very in-depth in Hire versus Get Hired. Do not miss that session. The thing is an assumption I just caught you saying, which is how do we compete with AI? That's the wrong premise. You're supposed to use AI to help you in the things that you're doing. And I'll show you how to do it via the freelancing route in order for you to get some experience before you come in to say that, you know, I can do certain things with AI. Okay, so again, attend the Hire versus Get Hired. There's another question that's on here, which is Daniel. So if you have a good boss, but for some reason he has no choice but to let you go because your client is unable to work with you and there is no more other reasons or projects for the company to hire you, what could have been done or said to dissuade the decision to forcibly resign or get fired? Daniel, this is a question where I already said at the start that as a manager, sometimes you are making a decision based on all bad decisions. There is no good way to walk out of a situation. So there is no choice but to make a certain decision. So when you say that, you know, to dissuade the decision to forcibly resign, has the manager considered that, you know, they can open up another role for you? That's one thing. And if that role does not exist, then there is no choice. Why would a company want to still continue paying salaries when there is no need for a particular thing to be done any further? So this is why as a employee, you want to be as adaptable as possible, which is why you want to increase your depth and also your breadth of skills, right? So that you can just Lego yourself into another organization. So sometimes to me, it's just about being adaptable, about being like, you know, okay, fine, you know, it doesn't work out here, then let's go somewhere else. And it's the same for me as a manager. Sometimes when I am, you know, advising certain startups and I feel that I cannot work with that founder any further, then I'll just, say that, we don't have to force ourselves together. Sometimes it's a series of just bad decisions. There's no good decisions to be made. So to say that you want to dissuade the decision or to forcibly resign or to get fired, as a manager, the best that he could do was to ensure that he has considered those options. And then if those options are still not tenable, then at the end of the day, the manager's duty is to the shareholders of the company, not to the employees. A manager first has ultimate responsibility to his superiors, not to his subordinates. So ultimately, yes, it doesn't work out. I hope they gave you a good, payout and stuff like that, so that, you could walk away and start afresh somewhere else. But at the end of the day, you need to be adaptable. You need to, have made suggestions as well to say that, I think that we could pursue this other client, and I'll be happy to spend another month trying to pursue another client for you so that I can take on another project. So it would be for you to sort of like put forward certain suggestions as well for the manager to say that, hey, that sounds like a good idea. So a lot of what a manager is supposed to do is problem solving, right? So you solve the problem. And if you can't solve the problem, then what's the next best alternative? It's all about decision making. So I hope I answered your question there, Daniel. So any other questions from anyone? Otherwise, Priya is going to jump in with teaching you some of the resources that NLB has. Priya, do you want to take over first? Because, we have only 8 minutes left.
The link for giving feedback isn't quite clear yet.
Sorry?
The link for giving feedback on this session.
So Priya, could you send the link for NLB's feedback session? And also someone's asking for the quiz link as well.
Yes,
Okay.
and your the feedback for you, I think, is in
So
link 3,
that's the
right?
NLB.
Which part of link 3?
No, the NLB link is not in Linktree. So this one Priya is going to put onto the chat box
Okay.
now. And then Vincent is asking for the quiz for today's session. He hopes it's not the onboarding homework. The onboarding homework is just for you to think about it. Like think about how you would do this, so that the next session you could be more productive in terms of, already jumping in to say that, hey, I thought about this and this is what I want to include. And next week, what I'm going to do is to just pick one person who has done their homework, and then we're going to help him build the entire thing. Otherwise, I'll just use my Made Without Borders case study, which I think everyone's going to be very bored by. So we're just going to pick that one person who's already done their homework, and then we would do the onboarding thing for him.
I think I will do the onboarding for my role, but I won't be ready to share. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll be sharing with the company.
So
Yeah.
just think about things, and then so that you could say that, hey, you are missing out on this, you're missing out on that. This
Yes.
also would include. So we could all contribute together to this particular one, because I will literally be on ChatGPT telling you how to do prompt engineering, right? And then it's like, okay, do not forget this, do not forget that, and
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's
placeholders for
cool.
this. Yeah. So
Okay, good. Yeah.
so Priya, you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you, Juliet. Hi, everyone. I hope you had a very fulfilling and fruitful session. I'm Priya. I'm actually from NLB. I'm one of the business resource specialists here. And before we wrap this up, I'll just quickly share about Launch and LearnX, which might be very helpful for you guys. So let me just share my screen. Yeah, so firstly, just some additional resources. So you can scan the QR code, or I'll send the link. Maybe I'll send it right now. So you can both connect with Juliet or access the NLB links. So you can go to the careers page and you can access some of NLB's resources like LinkedIn Learning, which is good for upskilling. And there's also a bunch of business library ebooks as well. So I'll go deeper into that now. So maybe I'll just quickly introduce Launch. Yeah, so a Launch is an initiative by NLB, and it's a service that's geared towards entrepreneurs, business owners, and even just professionals or leaders like yourself. If you're looking to take a different business direction, or you want to, even if you're in the ideation stage, so we kind of help to bridge that resource gap, and we help with business information needs. So we have a range of resources. So this is one of it, and this is actually a consultation service. So what you can do is you can book a consultation, and that'll be in the link that is in the chat. So you can basically submit a form with your business research query, and then I'm one of the specialists. So me and my colleagues will be arranging a consultation. So the consultation happens either on site at the National Library, or can also be conducted virtually. And what we'll do is guide you through some resources, some databases, and so on that can help to meet your needs. Do note that this is not like a personal advisory or coaching kind of session. We're not trained for that. What we do specialize in is research, but a lot of patrons have found this helpful, so something to consider. And besides the Kickstarter, we also have a bunch of different resources and databases. So some databases include ProQuest, Gale Business Insights, and LinkedIn Learning, like I mentioned. So yeah, you can access them, and you can find research reports. And all of these are usually very expensive outside of NLB subscription. So we always encourage patrons to, use this. And if you're interested, you can also join us for the Okay, I don't think I have the slide here, but we have a business info literacy session. So these are like workshops where we kind of navigate how to access and how to find the reports that you're looking for in these databases. So the next one is actually coming up on the 27th of Feb, and you'll be able to find it in the Linktree link. So yeah, so do sign up if you're interested. And lastly, there's also a new pilot initiative. So now you can actually borrow the general reference books. I'm not sure if many of you have visited the library recently, but for the reference books, they're usually not borrowable, so you can only browse them within the reading books, but now you can actually loan them home. So there's a bunch of different collections available from arts, business, humanities, and so on. So whatever meets your needs. So if you're ever at the National Library, level 7 to 9, you can check these out for your reference. Yeah. And lastly, please do give us your feedback. It's very valuable. So you can either access the link or scan this QR code, so we can know how to improve and also have more sessions like this one. Thank you so much. And you have any questions for Juliet or for me, you can just leave it in the chat.
All right, so I'm taking last final questions. So first of all, the recording and the slides. Unfortunately, for this particular one, because of proprietary thing, we cannot actually give away the content. So you do have to have taken the notes. So I hope you understand. For Ken, the last question here, is it true that a manager needs to develop someone to be ready to take over them as a manager? What are some metrics a manager tracks? I don't know. This is like a very weird concept for me. But it really depends on what you want to do. I don't think any manager is training someone to take over their job. I don't think that that is the thing per se. What I want you to think about is that when someone takes over your job, is it because you're going to go even higher up? Or are you fearful that someone's going to take over your job and then you are the expensive person that ends up having to leave? So every time you're a manager and you're training somebody that is your subordinate, and you're training them with certain skills, you as a manager have to make sure that your skills and your network is also expanding at an even further increasing rate than you are training the new guy. And that makes you relevant and that makes you viable to be kept on payroll. Because why would I, as a manager, want to keep somebody who is essentially cheaper than someone else who can do exactly the same job? So what I want people to think about, because I think that there's a lot of complacency in terms of the way that people look at what it means to be in a job. And they're just doing their job and they're staying stagnant and then making a lot of complaints, but then they're not really expanding their skill set, not really expanding their networks so that they can get themselves promoted to like a better place, or, starting some kind of side business as well to be able to do certain other things. To me, a job is a job. It's not a lifeline for me, right? If I wanted to do a job, it's because I enjoy doing it. I want to be around that set of people. And if it doesn't work out anymore and it's not viable, I can just pick up and leave. And this is the very thing in which I have trained myself to be able to do, which is I don't hold on to a job like it is everything. And then when that job is lost, I lose my entire world and everything around me collapses. So I think it's more like a psychological thing and your approach to what it means to have a job. So just, when you're asking questions like that, maybe see a therapist, because there's a lot of underlying things that is that is leading to that question, and you have to ask yourself that question, why you are asking this question. So that was answer for Ken. And then, oh, thank you, Charlie, as well. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, SL. But I hope this was a good session for you guys. I think that was my last question I'm going to take, which was Ken's. And remember, guys, you have 3 days to fill in your questions on the Google quiz form. 3 days, meaning that on the 2nd of February at 2 o'clock, the quiz will close, because we have to close the quiz. And so remember that you have to fill in 2 quizzes, one for each part. So today's one is quiz 1, and then next week there's another quiz, and then we'll mark it, and then we'll take it from there. But I do hope that you try and answer the questions. Just try and answer. Whether or not it's right or wrong, who knows, you get 50%, right? And you can pass at the end of the day. But to me, it is very important to really check the understanding that you have. And so any other questions as well, just come to the clinic. It's really good session. Every person who has gone to the clinic has, often raved about it, and, said that, they keep coming back. We have big fans here like Carrie. Carrie keeps coming back, for example. Carrie, you want to speak a little bit about the clinics? Or has Carrie left already? So I think Yushen as well was at the clinic as well. So Yushen, do you maybe want to share a little bit about the clinics as well? Anyone who has gone to the clinics and want to talk about what happens there?
Yeah, sure. Last time when I joined the clinic, there are some entrepreneurs who already start the business or plan to start the business to share their ideas. And then Julie will ask some questions to them and also help them to do some interview on things like, are you going to ask the rest of us, are you going to buy these products? What is the main concern? So I do think it's a very, very good chance and opportunities for those entrepreneurs to join this session. Because me myself is not an entrepreneur, I also feel very lucky to join this session because I can meet Juliet face to face, and Juliet also share with me some key insights on how to find as an individual contributor, how to find the passionate career path, because you share the Ikigai model. Yeah, it's really impressive, and I use that and I try to target on those careers that I have the signature strength on. So, and also I have another question. Is I want to post on LinkedIn with the Linktree QR code.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Yes, you can. Let me see.
It is the one
I have
with
to
the center
reshare this
stage
thing, right?
to be.
Share. Okay.
Yeah, this one. Thank you so much.
No problem. Cool. So, yeah, go ahead and, post it up on LinkedIn, tell everyone, about this session and, encourage them to come over for part two as well, even though if they only come for part two, they're not going to get the certificate. But, I feel that a lot of managers these days, especially invite your own managers if you think that they are that boss, and then a lot of people don't really understand that as managers, you're supposed to create the working environment. So to me, a lot of managers today in Singapore, they just keep the status quo moving. They don't realize they're supposed to improve the working environment through PTSTC and also to manage the risk around the environment. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about what that really means to be a manager. So thank you again, everybody, for your time today, and I hope this was useful. And I will see you next week. Any other questions? Contact me on LinkedIn, and then we will take it from there.
Right. Thank you.
Cool.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.